All right, here we go. Welcome in. This is the Coach Mark Gottfried podcast, the Front Row podcast, and today I'm fired up because not only do I have one of college basketball's greatest coaches of all time, but I've got a good friend that we go back way back, but Notre Dame's all-time winningest coach, Mike Brey, and who's now an assistant coach with the Atlanta Hawks with Quinn Snyder. So, Mike, welcome in. How are you?
Coach Mark, great to be with you, man. I was looking forward to this all week all weekend, I should say, because, man, we got some stories, you and I, and we'll tell some of them, but not all of them.
No, we can't. We got to keep some of those in the back pocket, but
no question.
So I tell people all the time, Mike, and as a friend and a competitor, because we were in the ACC together and we've competed, different times throughout our careers. But I always tell people, if I was a player or I had a son that was a player, you would be at the top of the list. I would want to play for you. And just watching you with your guys through the years and all the runs you've had at Delaware, and then obviously the long run at Notre Dame. Just one of the, not only a great coach, but you've just a great person. So, man, just congratulations on your career and now in the NBA.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Mark. And I know, and I know your game. You would have had fun with us. We'd let you shoot it all the time and let it rip. But I was looking at how connected and joined at the hip you and I have been through the years. You went to UCLA in '87. Mm-hmm. I went to Duke in '87 as an assistant. We sat in the same gyms, recruiting the same guys, the same AAU circuit. And then you became a head coach at Murray State in 1995, and I became the head coach at Delaware in 1995.
That's right.
And so, then we're both with Reebok, and by the way, those Reebok trips were unbelievable. But, I came down and spoke at your clinic. Remember down there at Murray? I came down, and we were always kind of moving together and maybe therapists for each other, as we move through our career.
Well, you had a great career, and just to kind of bring everybody up to date, and let's go back a little bit because, even though I know you really well, you and I really never even talked about this, but, kind of take me back the storied program of DeMatha High School for you, all the way back, and you've been around great coaches, but starting there or maybe even before then, but some of the guys that really had an impact on you and maybe those DeMatha years as a student in high school.
I was so fortunate, Mark. I got around, I was able to be around Morgan Wooten, God rest his soul, a Hall of Famer, and I was around him as a 10-year-old at his basketball camp in D.C. and became so enamored, brainwashed, motivated, whatever. I told my parents, I said, God, I'd really like to go play for him. And they were really supportive. And so then I went in the mid 70s and was able to play for him. And what the neat thing is, after my playing career, played down in Louisiana for a couple of years and then GW, I came back and started coaching with him. And he gave me great advice. He was an unbelievable mentor through it all. I was finishing at GW, and he said, I had a chance to be the grad assistant at George Washington. And he said, you really should come back with me because you need to have your own team if you're going to be a coach. I'm going to give you the JV. I was 22 years old. I went back to DeMatha High School. I was a U.S. history teacher, Mark. I faked it unbelievable. I don't know. There's a number of 5 years of kids that were really shortchanged on the U.S. history front. And at a Catholic high school, as you probably heard, man, they work you to death and don't pay. You take the oath of poverty, almost like the priests. And so I had the JV, and I was with Coach Wooten, and playing for him and then coaching with him was, the ultimate first step, as far as learning the game. He was the ultimate educator. He was a teacher. He was, as you said, a kind of guy you'd want your son to play for. You'd hand your son over to him and you would trust him. So And then the other positive to that, Mark, was, and he was really good selling me, and he said, look, if you want to be a college coach, with all the players we have at DeMatha, you're going to meet every college coach in the country because they're coming through to recruit. And I ended up spending a lot of time with Mike Krzyzewski when they recruited Danny Ferry and Bob Bender, who was the assistant at the time and probably was the guy who said, we should hire Mike. And then I was fortunate enough to head to Durham. So, yeah, DeMatha High School decision set the whole table for me.
Isn't it interesting, Mike, how when we're young, and like when you were young like that, and Steve Lavin and I, we just talked about it in our run we had at UCLA and kind of his whole career. But, he had gone to Purdue as a volunteer coach to make no money. Here I am at UCLA, and I'm the graduate assistant in 1987, 88, and I'm, making $600 a month, and I'm trying to get every free meal I can, from Coach Herrick. But, sometimes these guys nowadays, they are coming in and they don't understand like that, like what you went through and the decisions you had to make. But because you loved it, you just wanted to get in, and you got in and you learned and you did a great job. But a lot of us, we started off, we weren't making peanuts. It wasn't very much money at all, if
Mark,
any.
No, it's a great point. And Jay Wright and I talked about this back in the fall. We didn't know we didn't know.
Right.
We just jumped into it and never really thought about salaries or money. Hell, all these assistant coaches even have agents now. We didn't have agents.
No.
When I took the Delaware job, I don't know about you with Murray State, I never had an agent.
No.
I just met with the AD, and he offered me $10,000 more than I was making at Duke as an assistant. I was like, oh, I'm loaded. Let's do it.
But we all kind of did that. And but then, the payoff is later. But when you're in it, you're just doing it. You just do it. And but it's also an amazing time. Like I look back, and like you said, we didn't know the difference. And man, I'm at UCLA, and I'm just so happy to be there and learn and be around all the people. And you just really never know where it's going to lead you, as it did for you.
Yeah, you and I both. You just work. You get up and work, and you're doing stuff, and all of a sudden, opportunities present. You and I were both so fortunate. The UCLA program, the Duke program. We had that brand next to our name, and both programs were amazingly successful. So we were just so fortunate that we were getting opportunities, to do stuff. And I was there 8 seasons and turned down a couple mid-major jobs. And actually, I turned down the Auburn job in '94.
I remember.
And I took the Delaware job in '95. And everybody in the coaching profession said, you are the biggest idiot I've ever seen. But Mark, you and I both know I would not have been a great fit at Auburn. They would have run me out of town in 3 years. I went to Delaware, and I made my mistakes in front of 500 people and not on ESPN.
Mick,
like you at Murray.
No question.
We got, those were great places to start your head coaching careers.
Mick Cronin, I had Mick on, and he talked about the same thing. We had both stopped in at Murray. His first job was Murray, like yours at Delaware. Yep. And, that's a job where the bright lights aren't on you. You're going to make mistakes. I look back at my Murray State times, and I'm sure that I said some ridiculously dumb things here and there in the media. I probably, even hiring a staff, I had to make a coaching change, which is hard as heck to do. But you're at a place kind of like Delaware where you were, that even though you had been at Duke, you had a place where you could really kind of learn the Division I, all the things that go into being a Division I coach, but the bright lights are not shining on you every day, and they're not critiquing you for every mistake, which maybe you didn't make any. I know I made a bunch. I can promise you that.
Oh, God, no, we made them, no question. Yeah, you and I used to share that on the Reebok trips, how fortunate we were. We had good mid-major jobs. Like they had Murray State and Delaware are good mid-major jobs. So you had some stuff built in, and, if you handled things right, you were going to win enough and have a resume, even though I know when I went there, I was like, I'm just I'm good coaching here. I was kind of back in my region in the Mid-Atlantic, and the football coach, Toby Raymond, was there 40 years. I had a beach house down the road on the Delaware beaches. I'm like, this isn't too bad.
That's pretty good.
Camp was going good. That's how we had made all our money, right?
Right.
Had to have camp going.
Yep.
We were selling snow cones at camp and T-shirts, and it was such an innocent, good time. And then of course, you make the move and I make the move, and then we're in the real world.
That's right. Mike, go back with me before we jump away from Morgan Wooten, because for those that maybe don't know, he's probably one of the 1, 2, 3 probably most best high school basketball coaches we've seen in the last 50, 100 years, to be honest. I mean, he's in that group. There's no question about that. And you had such a luxury to learn from him. You kind of mentioned about him being like a teacher, but what are some nuggets, that you can say, man, I pulled this away from my times around Morgan Wooten?
I think Mark, his poise, he was steady, and it's really interesting, and he became really close with Coach Wooden, and obviously you're out there in his territory. Of course, South Bend, Indiana was Coach Wooden's territory too. His first high school job was South Bend Central High School, and getting off track here, but it's a great story for your audience. In 2000, I get the job at Notre Dame. Some of the gentlemen that played for Coach Wooden at South Bend Central were still alive and would have coffee at this one coffee shop. And I would stop by once a week and just listen.
Wow.
And it was classic. It should have been a podcast. I should have recorded it. It was unbelievable. But Coach, and so Morgan, there was a lot of similarities, Wooten, they spent a lot of time together, a really poised guy. He was you look back at his videos now and his books, very fundamental guy. And, he ran it. He was a great clinician. I really learned a lot going with him as a young assistant. I was his driver when he spoke at clinics all over the East Coast, and his demonstrator sometimes too. And so just to be around that, teacher, positive guy, good energy coming off him, able to connect, the ability to really connect with people and young people. And he used to say, and I still use it, I actually spoke at an NABC clinic here in Atlanta on Friday, and he used to say, and I didn't get it at the time because I wasn't married and didn't have a family, but he said, be the kind of coach you want your own son and daughter to play for. And I'm like, damn, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good way of thinking about it, right? How you, and your children have been athletes, my children, and they've all had different coaches. And so, that was a great theme, but being around them, being with them, I was just really fortunate. And then through my early years as a head coach, when I went to Delaware, I was only a 2-hour drive from DeMatha High School, and getting him up to some games, getting him up to speak to our team. He was still such a resource for me.
Mike, and then you had a great break, obviously, to head to Duke. And at that time, Duke's program was beginning to gain the momentum, that they later did. But then you're also now learning and being around Coach K. So walk us through a little bit of that, and how'd that happen? How did that job offer and the whole thing kind of came about for you?
Well, as you know, I was really fortunate. And back to Coach Wooten's line, if you want to be a college coach, you're going to meet all these guys because they're all coming through to recruit our players. Well, Danny Ferry was there at the time, and everybody was coming through. And at the time, Coach Wooten was a little tired of handling recruiting, home visits, setting up school visits. Mike, you handle that. Well, here I am, 25, 26-year-old, and here comes Dean and his staff. And here comes, Mike, here comes Lefty Giselle and his staff. And so it was just, I was really fortunate. I was also fortunate that Mike did not quite have a player ready to come back and be an assistant. Amaker who was his first player to come back, was still chasing a pro career. So if he was ready to coach, I never would have got my foot in the door. But certainly the relationship and Ferry was there as a player. And I'll never forget one of the things I think what helped was he didn't want someone coming who was going to make a quick pit stop and then get a head job. He wanted someone that was going to be there a while. Bob Bender was more experienced, and I learned so much from Bobby, coming from the high school ranks right into college. And I was with him 8 seasons, and I was spoiled, Mark. It was 6 Final Fours in the 8 seasons, 4 championship games. It just, it was ridiculous. But to go from Morgan Wooten to Mike Krzyzewski, I mean, if I couldn't pick anything up from those 2 guys, man, I would have had to get out of the business quick.
I can remember, Mike, and I think you and I probably have talked about this. I took an official visit to Duke, but this would have been with Chuck Swenson was an assistant, and
Yep.
I'm drawing a blank, but it was the year, I think they were 11-18, maybe his first year or second, first or second.
The Wolves were out.
And they were out.
Second year, actually, his second and third year, he went 11-18 back-to-back years. And they were ready, and Tom Butters the AD. But you told me this story. You visited, and then did they off and in this crazy business of recruiting? If you would have committed on the visit, who knows? I don't know. But I remember you telling me this story. And I replaced Chuck. Chuck went to William and Mary, and I replaced him. He took the head job at William and Mary. But you told me that story. You were this close to being a Blue Devil.
It was unbelievable. I can remember too. I took a visit, and I remember I was playing it cool, like kids like to play it cool, and I really liked Duke. Obviously, I had breakfast on Sunday morning out at Mike with his house with his wife, and we had a little Sunday morning breakfast. But then I got a call about 3 or 4 weeks later and said, well, we just got a commitment from this guy named Johnny Dawkins. And the nail went in the coffin. Boom. It was over. And I said, Johnny Dawkins, he's not very good. Come on, I'm better than that guy. But,
And it's funny how you got to be lucky in our profession, too, at times. Johnny Dawkins was the guy who probably turned it for Mike.
Yes.
And that class of Dawkins and Allery, but he was a National Player of the Year, certainly now the coach at Central Florida. But that I didn't know who the guy was, but I knew somebody committed.
It was Johnny.
That worked out pretty good for Mike.
Yeah,
and you went to Oral Roberts. Then,
probably
right?
a little better. It worked out better for Mike, I think, just to be honest. So now you're at Duke, and you guys have this great run, and maybe when you went there, or explain a little bit, because maybe did you know that the program was going to be as good as it was at that time? I mean, obviously things have to come together, and but the run just took off. It just took off while you were there.
They had gone to the Final Four in '86 and lost to Louisville in Dallas. Never Nervous Purvis put it on them. Remember that group? And in '87 then. Amaker was a senior. I think they lost in the second round. And I get there, Ferry and Quinn Snyder, who's I'm working with now here in Atlanta, were the captains. Billy King was a senior captain, and really good team. And you didn't know it was going to go like it did, but Mike was such a worker. I mean, such a grinding dude. It was unbelievable. That team won the ACC tournament, '89. And then here comes Leitner, Hurley, Hill, in 3 successful Grant Hill in classes. And that kind of then pushed it to the next level. But, we would go, Tommy and I were the assistants. Tommy replaced Bob Bender. Bob went to Illinois State. Then Tommy came back on the staff. We were coaching at the Final Four. It's a great story. We went to like 4 straight Final Fours my first year. My first 5 years, we were in the Final Four. We got knocked out, and I'm at the convention, the Final Four, and I don't know what to do because I always was playing. And I'm walking around the headquarters hotel, and Eddie Fogler turns, he goes, "You don't know what the hell to do." I go, I really don't, Coach. What do you do? Do you get your tickets over here? Do you do your and that's how spoiled we were. So spoiled, Mark. It was unbelievable.
So you guys had such a run, and it was amazing. And talk about a little bit now the Notre Dame job, because like you said earlier, well, first you got Delaware. You go to Delaware first, and you had a great run at Delaware. I remember you and I actually you beat my I think it was my Alabama team. I think it was in Arizona. Is that right?
The Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
We stole one down.
You got
Yeah,
us.
we
You
were in
got
the
us.
Fiesta Bowl.
You sure did.
You and I and Jimmy Larinaga, Bowling Green.
Uh-huh.
You were
right.
at Alabama.
Yep.
I think it was the crew, and Luke was coaching, and we had that was a good young team that ended up winning the league.
That's right.
Kid by the name of Mike Pegues, who's the associate head coach at Butler now.
That's right.
If I didn't have Mike Pegues, if Mike Pegues, and that's our current, if Mike Pegues, after his sophomore year at Delaware, if he did it now, he would have gone to Maryland or Villanova on me.
Yeah.
But I had him for 4 years, and we had a really good run, and I was there 5. We won back-to-back championships, and then here comes Jay Wright, Hofstra, and Speedy Claxton. And it was like, it's time to go if you can get one. And the crazy thing about the year before I interviewed for the job, Skip Prosser, God rest his soul, Dan Munson, and myself in Tampa at the Final Four. And we're Monday night after the championship, we're in the bar in the hotel, and we're like, well, you didn't get it? You didn't get it? Matt Doherty gets the job.
Wow.
And kind of came out of nowhere. So you never really think,
right.
That's not going to open again. You go back to Delaware. We had a nice team. We won 20 games. And all of a sudden it's July. And I tell the story all the time. I'm at my beach house in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. There's no cell phones. There's no internet. I pick up USA Today, and it's July 7th. I'll never forget it. And it says, Roy Williams turns down Carolina. And I turn to my son and I go, we may need to get ready for Notre Dame again.
Wow.
July 14th, 1 week later, I was on the plane to the press conference.
How about that?
Because Matt was the only guy in the Carolina family, and he went, and rightfully so. And less than a year, it's open again. Of course, a different AD. Kevin White then became the AD, and Mike was, and then you stay 23 years.
Right.
I mean,
which is amazing. Unbelievable.
It's just how the the dominoes in the profession we chose just start falling and things start happening.
Quick. Sometimes quick. Really quick. Mike, how about this one? So, the DeMatha background in the D.C. area, Catholic school, and here come now at Notre Dame. Like for you, was that a job? When I was young and my dad was a small college basketball coach in Ohio, he put me in the car one day and drove us all the way up, and I watched. This had to be like 1974 because I was like 8 years old. But I can still remember it. We watched Austin Carr play South Carolina. They had a guy named Johnny Roach, and I remember, and I was this little bitty guy at the game. But, I grew up kind of, my dad, the Catholic Church, the whole thing. And so Notre Dame was kind of always the Golden Dome is everything. But for you, was that like a job that boy, if I can get that one day, was it that for you?
It was, I can't sit there and say my connection was, and you throwing some great names out, John Roach and Austin Carr back in the day, and the old Joyce Center there on campus. But I knew Notre Dame through the DC guys. They really recruited DC, Carr, Dantley, Whitmore, Tracy Jackson. There was a pipeline out of DC. So when you're growing up in Washington, the high school guys you were idolizing, there was a pipeline. They were heading out to South Bend. So that was kind of your connection. And I did feel it was a great fit. I worked, Duke had your You had academic standards. At least back then they did, Mark. But that's a whole nother story. When I was, you and I could talk about that forever. But I actually had to go to the admissions office with the transcripts when I was. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But I felt I was. You were trained to recruit a certain clientele and young man, and I even though it was Indiana and I was an East Coast guy, they played in the Big East. So I felt like, okay, I'm going to come back and play at Georgetown and Philadelphia against Nova and the Garden. And so it had kind of an Eastern pull.
Yep.
It always has, even though it was out there in South Bend, Indiana. The only time I'd ever been on the campus was when I was an assistant at Duke. We played there a couple times. And get this, the year Mike was out, which was a horrible year, and he was out. Wojciechowski was a freshman. The only road game we won was at Notre Dame.
Wow.
And Pat Garrity was on the team then. And the 90s were tough for Notre Dame. So I came at a great time. John McLeod, God rest his soul, had Troy Murphy there, Matt Carroll, David Graves, Martin Inglesby. Matt Doherty had Ryan Humphrey sitting out, so he couldn't go anywhere. That rule wasn't in effect like now. He was locked up. Chris Thomas, Mr. Basketball, was committed. So I did really benefit. John McLeod and Matt Doherty left some dudes for us, and then when I got there, I didn't know it at the time, Mark. We had not been to the tournament. Notre Dame had not been to the tournament since 1990, Digger's last year. And we got in my first year, and that certainly was good for everybody, especially a rookie coach.
When I think about Notre Dame, and, obviously I always had these great interactions throughout the years with Digger. He was so much fun to be around, and I say this with all due respect because I love him to death, but, his ego is bigger than, state of California. But, I had so much fun just, listening to him, and he would tell the stories, and he was so, charismatic. But now you get the job, and in your early years, how was Digger with you? Was it good?
Well,
because he's a big personality, Mike. That's a big personality that's right there in town.
It's I never really realized what I signed up for when I took the job, that he was living in town, still there, and he was a voice on ESPN,
right?
As you know. So managing him was certainly, we managed great players, right? We managed the management of Digger, not only through my early years, but probably through 23 years, was always part of it. But I'll say this, after going through it, and we had some good years, he became a good friend and a mentor.
Good.
And when I could get him one-on-one, he's the only guy around that sat in the seat I was sitting in.
Right.
And he was helpful. But that was an interesting part of the equation. But when so this is a great story, and it's typical Digger and our guy. The summer before, I'm like 10 games away from breaking the all-time wins record, his record. The summer before the Memphis job opens. And the AD at the time is a Notre Dame grad. He comes in my office and goes, Mike, you've maxed it out here. It's time for you to go. I just got off the phone with the AD at Memphis. You'd be great there. He was shipping me out before I could pass him on the all-time wins list. And just classic Digger. And God bless him. He is who he is.
We had one, Mike. I was in the Meadowlands playing against Temple. I'm at Alabama. We're playing John Chaney, and Digger had the game. He was on TV. He had the ESPN game, and he gets me at shoot around, and he says, Mark, he said, this is how you got to do it. You got to step, slide right through. And he's giving me all these things, And so I had talked to Gail Catlett at West Virginia, and he said, Mark, run your guard cut, UCLA cut, hit your point guard on the baseline, and maybe attack the zone from the back of things. And so we did that. Anyway, we win the game. So after the game, Digger comes over and says, I saw it. Step, slide. You were doing just what I told you to do. So I just had to nod and say, yeah, you're right, Digger. Thank you, buddy.
Now, when he's in your town, a couple days a week, he's coming into practice and Mike. I think we need to press more. Here's what we do against Florida State, and God bless him. It came with the territory.
It's unbelievable. Well, those are some great stories, Mike, about Digger. I love Digger, and I always say my stories about him. I say it with the greatest of respect, but I had a ball, being around him. And how about for you at Notre Dame? Because for me at Alabama, you did a much better job than I ever could do because, I'd been at Alabama 11 years. We'd had some success, been the Elite Eight, ranked number 1. And I was getting frustrated. I knew Alabama football was always going to be Alabama football. I got it. But, I'm trying to get, carpet in my locker room, and they won't give it to me, and I'm getting frustrated. and I probably didn't handle it very well, but you did such a great job of, football at Notre Dame is a big deal, and Notre Dame basketball is too, but you probably managed that way better than I did. Did you feel that at times and understand the football thing at Notre Dame?
We used to talk about that on the road all the time, didn't we, Mark? Or at the ACC meetings, right? I certainly knew what I signed up for when I got there. You know what probably helped me? Delaware football was like a 1AA Notre Dame. Tubby Raymond, the wing T offense. So when I went to Delaware, my first job, you knew your place, and you try to ride the momentum, of a Saturday football. And so going out there, I certainly knew of the tradition of it. And how about in my 23 seasons, I had 6 football coaches, 6 guys. But I went through some of the same stuff. We didn't do anything with the Joyce Center. It was a pretty beaten up place, and we waited. And we waited, and I learned, to kind of just keep working and keep your head down. Practice facility-wise, we were probably a little late to the game there. There's a beautiful one out there now, but it took a while to get there. And I think I learned, and you know who helped me with it? Rick Barnes. Because you and I both know Rick Barnes, Clemson, Texas, Tennessee.
That's right.
And he was at Texas at the time. He said, Mike, and you can relate to it. There's something about coaching basketball at a football place. They'll leave you alone now.
That's right.
They'll leave you alone for a while. and I always tell the story. We were a 2 seed in 2011 with Ben Hansbrough, a really neat team, older guys. We lost to Florida State at 10 seed in Chicago on a Sunday. That night, Michael Floyd, the great wide receiver, got a DUI on campus. The next day, I don't even know if they know we played the night before. They're like, hey, great year, coach, great year. Get on the road, get us some other guys. Spring ball starting tomorrow.
See, your temperament is probably a little better than me because I was getting too grumpy and it started bothering me. And all of a sudden, I'm like, who am I? I'm mad at everything every day, and I'm barking at people But there's so many similarities to that. When I was at Alabama, I was there 11 years, Mike. I had 5 head football coaches in 11 years. 5.
You had 5 and 11.
5 and 11.
And I could see.
Yeah, one of which never coached a game. Mike Price. He didn't make it. He got from January till, but he was still 5.
Well, you know what? Again, we're joined at the hip. I had George O'Leary as one of the 6. He lasted 3 days because the resume was wrong. And I count him because, man, did the building cave in when he only left in 3 days. But, I could see, you got to number 1. You got to number 1 without much help. And so now you're looking around the next year like, hey, are we going to do something now? And they're like, keep it going. Good luck.
Best of luck. Hey, we're proud of you, Mark. We're really proud of you.
Proud of you. Great job, man. Great job. Hey, have a good time in Florida.
You had such a great run, Mike. And what I tell people all the time, because, I was at Alabama 11, I was at NC State 6, and, I kind of bounced around. But to survive, I say survive, and in coaching, we get it. Sometimes fans don't get it, but we understand. You survive at one school for 23 years. And, you and I can count on one hand the guys in our profession that last that long at one school because, fans get a little bit tired and they're tired of your jokes. You're the media, this guy over here, he wants to hear a new something. And, you go speak at some group and they're kind of, they're tired of you a little bit, but you were able to do that. And it's such a great feather in your cap. Not only were you a great coach, Mike, and you had just a great run of winning, but I just admire guys. I admire you because that's hard to do. It's just really hard.
It's looking back now, it was kind of a blur. Our profession is staying ahead of the posse, right? And it was interesting. We had won enough, and we had our. I got there and went to 3 NCAA tournaments in a row in a Sweet 16 after they hadn't gone in 10 years. I'm mayor.
Right.
Then we went to 3 NITs. And now I'm hiding in my basement. Now it's starting to get a little different. I'm not walking around the football games with my chest out as much. I'm hiding a little bit. You can relate, right? We know the drill. I'm like, oh hell, and but it was interesting. You get put on the mat in our profession, and then are you going to have a year to get you off the mat?
Right.
And I had 3 of them in 23 years, but 2 years ago, we were struggling, and it's January, and I'm going, you know what? I don't have anything left. I've used all my stuff on the media, on the fan base. I got it. I can't go back to, we're going to do this, so we're going to have you know what? That's a sign from God. It's time.
Well, you did, Mike. You've had and still are coaching, and you've just had an amazing run. So if you were coaching, I ask guys this all the time now because now I'm on the sidelines and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. But I look at guys and I see this climate of the portal and the NIL, and I just kind of look at some of us that are a little bit older, and some guys are doing a great job. They're adapting, and you would, and I would. We'd all adapt, but. You go back and look at all the guys that you helped develop over a 3 or 4 or 5 year period.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that's probably gone, maybe forever, it'll happen here and there, but not very often, is that ability to recruit a kid and get him on your campus, build an unbelievable relationship with him, and then watch him grow from that freshman year when they don't know anything and they think they do, but they're just not really ready to play at your level. And then as a sophomore, then as a junior, and then you walk them out there on senior night, and and that's probably for me. I'm happy kids are getting paid. I love it. I think it's good. I think the NCAA ought to pay them rather than all these booster groups and collectives.
Right.
But the developing of players, that one kind of makes me sad a little bit to think of that. I go back, all the guys you did too, and what's your feeling on that?
No, it's a great point, Mark. It was starting. It was coming, at my last year or two, and it was really frustrating, how it changed that way. You're right, though. The guys that were with you 4 years, and hey, you redshirted a guy, and he trusted you. He said, "Yeah, coach, I get it. I'm a 5-year man," and of course, we made a living off 4 and 5 year guys. Guys that just got better and older and played as juniors and hung around, and it just seems. It's over. My last year, the NIL was starting to kick in, and a really good prospect from the Chicago area who was on campus a lot, great kid, great student, great family. And I don't fault him because they knew the rule was they can be paid now by way of NIL. And I'd go through, and you and I all had the pitch for, hey, here's how we're going to play, and let me talk to you about the Mendoza Business School at Notre Dame, and we're going to play against Duke and Carolina and State and boop, boop, boop. And 3 times the father then pulled me aside and said, Mike, that's great, but what's the number?
What is it?
And after the 3rd time, I was like, this ain't anymore. No. I don't think I can do this anymore. Unfortunately, I maybe felt sick enough to go. It's time to hand the baton off. And then with the immediate eligibility, you and I were on the board of directors of the NABC together for a long time. And Matt Painter and I spent so much time trying to keep the year in residency, the sitting out a year rule in. Mm-hmm. And they just laughed at us. I'm like, what a waste of time. And now that has made it really hard to know who you have and what you have. Of course, I look at the headlines and I can't keep up with this guy's there now. And going within the league, Mark, that used to be, you do not transfer within the league. Like, and we don't touch each other's property. Look, there's honor I always say there's honor amongst us thieves, basketball, and we are thieves. Don't get me. But like when it came to property of your league mate, didn't. And now it's just amazing. It's amazing how that's changed.
And I watch too, Mike. I'm seeing Alabama just got the point guard from Auburn. It just blows my mind, and it's part of the norm now. And now that they have the rule where you can transfer 4 times without having to sit out.
Yeah.
And it just becomes so transactional. Everything's a transaction. It's almost a 1-year transaction. And I'm gonna build a team for 1 season. And really now, if you're at a Notre Dame or Alabama or NC State or wherever you are, it's almost like I'd love to have a mid-major all-star team, which is kind of what some of the teams that advanced through the tournament this year had. They had the best player from, Alabama's got the best guy from Hofstra, the best guy from North Dakota, the best guy from, those leagues. And it just changed the game. And I don't think we're going to put the toothpaste back in the tube. I think it's kind of here to stay.
No, I think you're right, Marcus. Moves so fast that, again, you and I were on the board, and we discussed, like, where did this come from? It just steamrolled us. And I don't know if it was the amateurism model that we held on to too long. I don't know, but it just ran over us so fast. But old teams, right? How about the kid Cormac Ryan? Played at Stanford as a freshman, transferred to me, sat out a year, played at Notre Dame, and this year he's probably the key leader with North Carolina, and he's 25 years old. And Hunter Dickinson's going back, and he's 25, and actually Armando Bacot was in for a pre-draft workout with the Hawks today. He's 25. It's the lead, but you're right. The mid-major, picking off those guys, which some people have really brilliantly done with their program, and they got old guys that have played like 60 games.
Yeah,
and plug them in. And how do you play an 18-year-old freshman now? He's matched up against a 22, 23-year-old. It's hard to put him in the game.
And it really, Mike, it just comes down to the number, like you said. It's an NIL number, and again, I'm happy for the players. I've said it many times, especially on my podcast right now. I go back with the NCAA, and I think this year they made $1.3 billion was the gross. I read on the 3-week tournament. Yet they're still not sharing that money with the players, and so all the pressure is on your boosters at Notre Dame or NC State to form a collective, and the boosters, are putting money into this thing, and I'm not sure that's sustainable over time, and so. I'd love to see the NCAA start sharing the money. And for me, it's not real complicated. And if they really want to, they will. You and I both know that, having been on those committees. They can do whatever they want to do if they really want to do it. And I don't think they really want to.
Yeah, it sounds like another crossroads is coming. We're begging, right? They're begging Congress for some guardrails. It doesn't seem like Congress has been very receptive. But I look back at it, and I don't know how you feel about this. I was telling somebody, your visits, how tedious was it, Mark, to recruit a high school kid? Whew. It's long and winding, and now you sit there on Zoom and go boop boop boop, or a kid comes in for 5 hours. Here's the deal. Here's the gym. Here's the thing. Do you even want to talk academics? No. Oh, don't worry about it. We'll deal with that later. And next.
It's a whole different
That's
animal.
The world.
Mike, how much has all of your experiences as a college coach, as you now are in the NBA, and basketball is basketball, and they play the game a little bit differently as far as some things, but basketball is basketball. How much has all of your experiences throughout the years helped you with an easier transition as you now coach in the NBA?
What was really neat about this year, Mark, it was all basketball. Mm-hmm. As you and I both know, college coaching may be 25% basketball, 30% basketball, recruiting, raising money for NIL, beating booth. It was all basketball. And to me, I actually told some people, it was almost like professional development, because I really felt, and I don't know how you felt at the end of your career at State, I almost felt a little stale about our system, because we just never took the time to say, all right, let's dig in, because there was always a guy coming unofficially for a visit. There was always a booster to meet. There was always something that took you away from, like, let's really dig into our system, and what do we, and so it was learning. It was great learning. But at the end of the day, it's basketball, and it's managing people, managing egos, managing young men. And what's crazy about it is many of the kids, or many of the young men with the Hawks, and I knew them when they were 14 and 15.
Right.
Like there's 7 guys on our team we recruited. And, and so you have a reference point, and maybe you've been able to help Quinn and our front office. What's exciting for me now, I'm helping our front office, because I can make some calls to a college head coach and get the real info. And so that's been really interesting as the draft is around the corner in late June. The 24-second clock, the speed of the game. The thing that blew my mind, 82 games, and you just don't have time to practice. It's after training camp for 3 or 4 days in early October. Now you're playing, and it's kind of a walkthrough, shoot around. We're going to watch a little video, and the pace of that thing, it took me to All-Star break. I'm like, I was in a fog some games. It was.
Where am I?
It just keeps coming. And here, this is great. The games are so long, right? Because it's 8 minutes longer. The third quarter buzzer went off in the second exhibition game, and I started to get up. I go, that's got to be it, right? I've been sitting here. The young guy goes, Coach, that's the end of the third quarter. I go, yeah, I got you.
How about this one? Because I think when I look at Mike, I look at Kelvin at Houston. You and I have known Kelvin for years and years, Kelvin Sampson. But those years, I think, and he and I've talked. You talk in the NBA, the amount of possessions, the time and score, the clock, the 4 quarters, the number of games. All of those things, and then obviously what you're learning, just technique-wise, or what you want to run offensively or defensively, those type things. But just the number of situations in the NBA. And then you come back to college like he did, and I would think just watching him, everything is kind of amped up to another level. It's like you get a rebirth of teaching again, like like you said, you maybe your thoughts process is a little stale. Now it's like I get a whole new arsenal of things I've been exposed to.
No, it's a great point. Like I'm saying, if you became a head coach again, God, why didn't we do this with pick and roll defense?
Right.
Why didn't, God, I can't believe we did. And what's crazy is what there's 110 possessions in an NBA game, a college game. It's really compacted, but no, just the different, and my mission, I've been banging the table to get, to play a little more zone, because the league has started to play a little more zone. And that's my project this summer, to keep working on Q. Like, let's ride it a little bit. But no, the sets, when you came to the ACC, right? Okay, what's that coach do? What's his thing? It was such an education. Rick Carlisle plays like this. Nick Nurse likes to do this. Thibodeau does that. I didn't really concentrate on that when I was a college coach. You're too busy, man. You watch the playoffs a little bit, but to dig into that was kind of energizing. It was kind of like, at 65, I'm learning again about the game, which was cool.
That's fun. I used to tell people sometimes, Mike, I said, I don't know if our zone defense is very good, but sometimes my opponent, their zone offense is worse than my zone defense, so I'm okay.
Amen.
I'll just stay with my zone defense.
No question. Just change the rhythm of the game, and 3 guys are in the wrong spot, but the offense was more screwed up than us.
No doubt. And then I would be afraid, because I would have teams, we'd be playing man-to-man defense, and a team they'd make your teams. You'd make 10 threes against our man. I said, okay, we got to go zone. Let's go zone. You make 1 3, and then my staff's like, let's get out of it. Let's get out of it. I said, well, time out. They made 10 against our man-to-man defense. So.
Oh no, I'm there with you. Mark, I'm there with you as and quick. I'm that like that too. Like, oh, let's go zone 1-3. Go, we got to get out. We got to get out. And there's where Boeheim was so brilliant. He would just sit there,
Stay
and
in
the
it.
threes would be going in, and they just keep getting back. And eventually, the rhythm of the game changes, and there it is, game situations, and stuff happens.
And, playing against Jim's team, sometimes late in the game, I'd want to get a shot for a certain player, and I couldn't always get it because they were in the zone. I couldn't always get the shot I wanted to get for TJ Warren, who was, killing them or whatever it might have been. And he just became hard sometimes to dictate offensively what you're trying to or what you want to get.
God, he was a good player for you. You remember this, and you talk about, I'm living in Atlanta now after 23 South Bend winters. We played you on one of the coldest days in the history of South Bend, Indiana, and you kicked our butt. TJ Warren went off, but I remember we shook hands before the game, and you said, how in the hell do you live here?
Hey, Mike, we had a manager. We were unloading a plane on that trip into South Bend, and one of my managers got frostbite on his fingers. It was the coldest I've ever been on a road trip in South Bend, Indiana that year. There was no question.
And that was a great advantage. Now, that was the epitome of cold, but certainly the weather, it was an advantage, especially when we went to the ACC. Here comes the teams from the Southeast rolling in and landing in South Bend on a January night, and that plane door, and then they are sitting in the hotel in dreary downtown South Bend. I'm thinking, we may have it. They're getting zapped a little bit. I used to love to wake up on game day and the snow was blowing off Lake Michigan. I said, okay, we got a shot tonight.
Mike, looking back on your career, which you got a lot of basketball left in you, and I don't know exactly what your aspirations are. You'd be a great head coach in the NBA, or if you ever went back to college, whatever you'd like to do. But if you were sitting with a young 23-year-old Mike Brey, and you had a chance to sit and talk to him, and obviously we understand you got to win to keep your job. I mean, we all have to win. We can't be terrible and continue. But what would those things be, Mike, that you would tell a young Mike Brey to cherish or to concentrate on throughout this next 20 or 30-year run that he may have?
Yeah. No, that's a good one, Mark. I think, and you and I were trained that way, how do you get better? How do you spend time at clinics, camps, going to other guys' practices? How do you absorb the game and listen? Again, being with Morgan Wooten, all those guys came in to recruit, and I'd sit there and they'd watch Ferry and Open Gym, and I'd listen and pick their brain. If you can get to those forums, I always tell young guys, and I don't know if it's still the route anymore, go work 4 or 5 college camps. Mm-hmm. Get around the assistants at a college, because those are the guys that are going to get head jobs. Mm-hmm. The head guy doesn't even know your name running the key. He don't want to know you. But the assistants are going to get a job. And how many stories are there, Mark, of guys get a job, an assistant gets a job from a Power 5, and he takes a guy that he knew at camp.
That's right.
That he met at camp, who was a grinding dude and young guy like that. And those would be. And then the ability to be, one of the things I got to maybe the last 10 years to kind of really be a confidence giver. Can you give confidence? And you and I are kind of cut the same way, how we handled young people, man, keeping them loose, smiling. I can remember your demeanor when Dennis Smith had maybe 50 in Cameron that night. Your demeanor with him, was so good. And people always say, well, God, Mike, you were smiling. And well, we're faking it a little bit. We're tight as a drum inside. But, I said, sometimes you just got to fake that, man. Mm-hmm. But the ability to connect with young people and get them confident, man, and being a enthusiastic energy guy, that if you're that, people will notice. And if you're a worker, man, you're going to have chances.
Yep. Well, you mentioned early, Mike, you and I had some lot of fun through the years, and back to the old Reebok trips, Jim Herrick Jr., God rest his soul. And but boy, we drank a few beers, and we had some good laughs, and hopefully there's going to be a lot more of them. But man, I'm proud of you, Mike. You've had a great run, unbelievable career. Hopefully a lot left for you. But I just want to tell you thank you for coming on, and man, it's been great catching up.
Well, you're a hell of a coach too, Mark. We banged heads a lot. And you look at your body of work and what you did through the years. You know, we were really lucky to get the time we got in college coaching, and we worked our butts off for it. But man, we were also fortunate. And man, were we around good people. But when I get west, next year, we'll definitely catch up and get together.
Come find me. All right, Mike. Thank you very much.
See you, man. Take care, Mark.
Thank you. See you.